Okay, so now we're going to get on to modeling the fork part here, the retracting end. And you can see that I've backed up a little bit. In between videos I tried it again to make sure I knew exactly my path. And so let's just build this again. Now, this is one of those instances where you might choose a slightly different way of doing it, but the idea is that there are certain things we're trying to achieve. So I'm just hitting G to do that again. And one of those things is that we have to go from this simple model, this area. If you think of this like a hand, the palm part is pretty simple in terms of detailed geometry. But when you get to the fingers, you need more geometry to hold them. So we have to try and do something similar here. And this is not an uncommon problem, going from a low resolution or low detailed part of the model to a higher detailed part of the model. So this is the way that I'm going to do it. So first of all, I'm going to divide the model in half because I don't really want to do this twice. So I'm going to cut the whole model in half and then delete one half and just work on one side and then recreate it again. So to do this, first I'm just going to delete history. I've got a shortcut button for history, but you should know where that is by now. I'm going to use the multi-cut tool, and if I hold down Control, you can see it does the same thing as edge looping. So it's another way to get an edge loop is to multi-cut with Control held down. And then if I hold Shift, it will lock it to the middle. So now I've got a good cut all the way down here. And then this part was already divided down the middle. So I'm just going to delete half of my model. I should just do this in the top view. Makes more sense to do this in an orthographic view. Okay, so now we have half the model here. So now let's look what we have to do. We have to have a division for this tine, for this gap, for this tine, and then half of this gap. So I'll use my multi-cut tool again. And so I'm just going to, I'm not sure really the best way to do it. So now I don't want to do Control. I don't want to have an edge go all the way down. This is what we're trying to avoid. We don't want to add all of these cuts and have them travel all the way down the tool, because that will just make it difficult to edit and will make it look a little lumpy and wrinkly down the length of the rest of the tool here. So instead, what I'm going to do is hold down, just go over this edge, hold down Shift, click in the middle there. So Shift will lock it to a certain increment along that edge. And if we look here, multi-cut options, the snap set is 50. You could change that yourself to whatever you want. So I'm going to do this again, hit Y to relaunch the same tool. Shift, Shift, Enter. Now I know these aren't lining up exactly, although that's pretty good. Do the same thing again. Shift, Shift, Enter. So I'm going to try and space these out kind of evenly. Just move this over here. So this is just half the gap, so that's okay. And I want to make these, I could probably do this more precisely somehow. But I really just want to have these tines about the same width. Let me pull that out a little bit. Okay, that's fine. Something like that. So now I'm going to start cutting, and I'll kind of show you what I'm doing. And my guiding principle here is I want to go from 1, 2, 3 divisions, or really 5 divisions if you count the outside edges, down to 3 and then down to 1. And minimizing the number of triangles or non-four-sided polygons that we have. Okay, so multi-cut, click on that vertex, and then I'll just click here, hit Y to do the same, launch the tool again and complete the last action. Y completes the action, launches the tool, hit enter to complete the tool. So what do I have here? Four-sided, 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 four-sided. Now this one is an ugly one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7-sided. That's bad. So let's keep cutting to there and then back up to here. So it looks like I made a triangle, but no, that's not a triangle. This one is four-sided, right? So four-sided, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4. And now we've got a five-sided. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I'll cut one more time. Oops. From here to here. And now we have all four-sided polygons except for one triangle. So that is not bad. I can live with that. Now I have to do the same thing on the other side. There's no, I mean, I could probably throw an edge loop down the middle here, delete half the model, and then flip it, but I can't really be bothered to do that. So I'm just going to redo the same thing on this side, and you'll get to see it again. So I'm going to go from here to somewhere here, hit Y to complete, reactivate the tool. Okay, same thing, go from here to here to here. There's our new quad. And then from here down to here to make our triangle. So that's pretty good. And in terms of spacing these out, I can do that. If I'm trying to make sort of a loop going around here by doing this. But I kind of want the top and the bottom to be the same. So I'm going to show you a trick for that. So I'm in X-ray mode right now, this button here, in the top view. And you can see, we can see the top and bottom, and the lines are not matching up exactly. So these 2 points, I want them exactly over top of each other. One's on the bottom, away from us, and one is on the top. So if I select both of them and go into scale mode, R, and hold down X, X is grid snap, you can see up here, and then move this axis all the way in. Now they're aligned this way. Do the same thing, this axis, and they're aligned that way. So I'm holding down X while I do that. And the reason I'm not scaling them from the center is because I don't want them to pinch together in this direction if I did that, right? So that's why we do it that way. Do the same thing again. This grid snap scaling thing is a common solution to aligning vertices. So now they're all aligned, top and bottom, nice and clean. I'm going to save. So I'm just going to continue modeling this half, and then I'll reflect it over after. There's no point in doing this twice. So now that I have these aligned, though, I might want to space these a little differently. So if I go here and I marquee select, I'll get the top one and the bottom one. So I'm just trying to tidy this up a little bit. So I'm seeing a ring of faces here. This edge, or this line of faces, ends here in this triangle. This one still continues all the way up to the middle. So that's pretty good. I'm happy with that. So now we're going to make these tines. So as you can imagine, we would extrude. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to extrude them flat, but the length that I think I need them. Now these ones, actually I can see from the picture, they're kind of pointy. Mine are going to be kind of rounded, so you can do whatever you want here. But if I go to extrude and extrude them out, because I'm going to curl them up using a deformer after this, a bend deformer. And for a bend deformer to work, we need divisions. It has to have geometry to bend. So I'll add some divisions in here. How many? I'm not sure. Not too many, but enough that it will bend properly. So I don't know, I've got 10 here, and I've got the thickness of 2.08, so let's do that to 2, just to make it a little cleaner. Okay, so now this is something we haven't done before, but we're going to use a deformer to deform that part and roll them up. So deformers are here under the deform menu, as you can well imagine, and there's a lot of stuff here. So you can just ignore everything except for this non-linear menu for now. And so these are some kind of procedural deformers that can be edited and can also be animated. And they share some common qualities. Now, if I have the whole piece of geometry selected and I add a bend deformer, it's oriented in this direction. So first of all, I just have to go into rotate mode, hold down J just to snap it, rotate it around, so it's aligned with the object. And then the curvature here, so I can adjust that and you can see it's bending my object, which is pretty good, except we don't want to bend the whole object. We just want to bend this part. To get rid of a deformer, you can just select it and delete it, and then the deformation will be gone too. So instead of selecting the entire piece of geometry, I'm going to select these vertices. Okay, and then I will do the same thing, deform, nonlinear bend. Got to rotate it around, and then we'll adjust the curvature. So obviously not quite what we want, but you'll notice under the inputs for the bend, we've got a low bound and high bound, and the low bound is the length of this stick here, the high bound is the length of this stick here, if we go into form mode, and then this is the curvature. So if I take the low bound and I just reduce that to 0, you can see that the effects of the bend deformer only go to its middle point. Now I can adjust the curvature to be more aggressive. That's pretty good. And I can also move the entire bend handle. So this is called a bend handle, and it will adjust it like that. So that's pretty good. And I can still, I guess, is 180 the most? No, you can type in more, but I'll leave it at 180. Right, so this way, the good thing about using something like a procedural bend deformer rather than trying to model this in this shape by hand is that you can use the easy tools of extrusion to have an evenly spaced geometry rather than trying to extrude it in this direction. And then after the fact, do something like the bend deformer that is consistent and procedural, and you can adjust the values easily. So that's pretty good. I'm pretty happy with that. I'm going to save. Now to get rid of the deformer but keep its effects, you select the geometry and go to Edit, Delete by Type, History. Now you'll notice right below that if you wanted to delete the history but keep the deformer, you can use Delete Non-Deformer History. But we just want to delete everything. Now that's gone. So we're almost there, actually. But there's two more major steps here. First of all, we've got to mirror it to get to the other side. But we also have to control the edges a little bit more. So if I hit 3 on the keyboard, you can see it kind of loses its shape here a little bit. And that's because we've just been working with structural edges so far. We've been building the rough shape of the object. However, we also have to add in some places support edges. So for example, if we wanted to hold this edge a little more strongly, I could go into the multi-cut tool, hold down Control, and throw in an edge loop there. And then when I hit 3 on the keyboard, now you can see it's holding that shape a little bit better. So that's because we have a support edge there. So it's not just averaging out over this whole distance when we smooth it. It's using a support edge, which I just deleted. So you can use edge looping, multi-cut tool to add support edges. What I'm going to do in this case is add some bevels. So let me just show you what a bevel is. And I wouldn't do it exactly in this way, but just so you can see. So let's say I select these two edges and go to bevel. You can see it slices off that corner, and we can adjust the depth of that slice, and we can add some segments there too. So a bevel rounds that edge off. But you can see when it goes from bevel to non-bevel, you get some ugly geometry, some triangles here. So it's best to do a bunch of beveling, continuous beveling all at once. So I'm going to bevel all the way up the side of this one, down the side of this one, up the side of this one, and so on. So this probably makes more sense to have both halves in place. So to mirror this geometry, you use the mirror tool. So I'm going to delete, I just deleted the history, so we're good. I'm going to do it again anyway. So if we go to Mesh, Mirror, and the defaults are like this. I think the one thing we have to turn off here is cut geometry. Geometry type should be a copy. We're going to merge. We're going to automatically combine them. So this should work. Didn't work. Okay, so we're going to go to Mesh, Mirror, open up the options. So the mirror axis was along the X axis. I guess I modeled mine in a different direction, so I'm going to mirror it over the Z axis. There we go. Now you have to go in and take a look and make sure it didn't merge vertices you didn't want it to merge unintentionally. Areas like this where things are kind of close together, but it all looks good to me. So this is all one object now. So now we're just going to do a little beveling. So like I said, I want to do some continuous beveling. So how do I do this? I don't want to bevel all the way down there though. I think I want to end my bevel here and go around. That will help me keep this sort of shape like this with a nice tight corner here. You could also achieve a very similar effect by selecting all these faces along the side here and doing an extrude, but beveling I think makes more sense. So I'm going to select this edge and double click this edge. Okay, so it went all the way around the model in the wrong direction. So I'm going to click on this edge and double click this edge. So now we have continuous edges here. Click here, double click here. So we've got all of these edges going around here. Now I could bevel now, but I might as well just bevel everything together. So I'm going to hold down Shift, double click there. Just double click on one of these. I want to go here. So you can see I'm going up and around and back, so that almost complete. Select that one too. Now one thing is I could try and get rid of this central edge, but I'm not going to bother. I think it will cause more headaches than it would solve. Okay, I'm just going to continue around here. So this is another reason to model with clean, consistent geometry. It allows long selections of edges and faces like this. When this is broken up with non-four-sided geometry, then I'm trying to do things once. Then Maya doesn't know how to process the continuing path down the model. So now I've got all of these selected, I think, and I'll just bevel. Now beveling can be a little bit crashy, by which I mean it can cause Maya to crash. So I should save before I do this, which I just did. That worked well. So fraction I can adjust. So we just want a low fraction, fairly low, just to hold the shape and maybe add one extra segment in there. And so we should see when we hit 3 on the keyboard now that it holds its shape a little bit better and actually holds this corner a little bit better too. Now in the actual model, these are kind of pointy, and to do that I might need an extra piece of geometry here. So I'm just going to pretend like they're not pointy, but I suppose you could try and fake it just by pulling these out and maybe scaling these down a little bit. It starts to make a kind of ugly geometry here though. See how it's stretching this out? It looks fine in 3 mode, but it doesn't look that great in 2 mode. I mean, you could have, before beveling, extruded out one of these. So shortcut for extrude is just holding down Shift and pulling out the face. You know, this would be a good way to make that pointy edge, but I would do this before beveling this around. We're going to pretend mine is correct, and that looks pretty good. Now there are other places I could bevel. Like here we're losing some of the structure a bit. I'm not exactly sure where I would put bevels in here. I mean, I could try to just select these faces and do an extrude and just offset them. Oops. Let's change this. Offset them inwards just a little bit. So now if I hit the 3, you can just see it just has a little bit of extra topology here to hold the shape. It's kind of ugly topology here though. I'm not that happy with that. It's got a triangle here. You got a lot of points coming into this one vertex. We could add an edge loop here to try and control the effects of that a bit. So what you want to do is to turn off this wireframe unshaded thing and just click away from it and see if there are any kind of wrinkles or bumps in places that you don't like. Like to me, you can see this kind of bump here. That's a bit of a problem. Maybe it doesn't matter, it depends how close you're going to get. So I'm kind of happier to have it more like this. Again, if I just click away, yeah, you can see it's a bit cleaner. So in places like this, you can see that these are kind of being stretched a little bit. We still have 4-sided polygons everywhere, but even with smooth turned on, it's not subdividing quite enough. So just to show you a little trick, if we go into the attribute editor for this model and go to smooth mesh, you can see that subdivision levels here are, so this is when you hit 3 on the keyboard, it gives you preview subdivision levels of 2, and the rendering uses the same level. If you want this to look a bit better, you can go to 3. Now you can see it kind of smooth this out a little bit, and let me just change that. Right, and then use preview level for rendering. Alternatively, you can turn that off and turn that to 3, so it just goes to that nice level at render time and keeps your scene a little lighter. So whatever, any of these things will work. So in the next video, we'll just correct a couple little things, and then we'll add a material.